The smell of damp earth and lake water is the first thing to greet you as you wake, a cool grey mist clinging to the canals of Tenochtitlan before the world has fully stirred. You lie still for a moment on your woven reed mat, feeling the slight stiffness in your shoulders from yesterday's long hours of precision, a familiar weight that tells the story of a lifetime spent hunched over a wooden frame. The air is thin and crisp here in the high valley, and as you pull your cotton tilma closer around your chest, you listen to the rhythmic, muffled sounds of the neighborhood of Amantla beginning its day. It is not the roar of the great marketplace or the thundering drums of the Templo Mayor that define your mornings, but rather the gentle domestic hum of a community dedicated to a singular sacred craft. You hear the distant slap of a tortilla being shaped between palms, the soft splash of a paddle in the water as a merchant navigates a nearby canal, and the rustle of the wind through the chinampas, those floating gardens that provide the lifeblood of this shimmering city on the lake. As you rise, your bare feet find the familiar smooth texture of the stone floor, which carries the lingering chill of the night. You move slowly, with the deliberate grace of a man who knows that haste is the enemy of beauty. In your mind, you are already visualizing the work ahead, the vibrant greens and shimmering blues that will soon pass through your fingers. You are Amanteca, a member of the elite guild of featherworkers, and your hands carry a responsibility that transcends mere decoration. To the people of the sun, feathers are not simply parts of a bird. They are the breath of the gods made visible, the very essence of the divine captured in a fragment of light and air. As you prepare yourself for the day, perhaps adjusting the simple knot of your cloak or smoothing back your hair, you might find yourself settling into a quiet rhythm of gratitude for this space of peace. It is a wonderful thing to have a moment to simply exist before the demands of the world take hold. If you are settling in for the night right now, finding your own place of rest, you are exactly where you need to be. Here at the Slumber Archives, we bring you new journeys into the quiet corners of history every single day, weaving stories to help you drift into a deep and peaceful sleep. If you find comfort in these narrations, please do consider subscribing so you never miss a night with us, and perhaps leave a like to help other weary travelers find their way to our community. Now, as the light begins to turn from a bruised purple to a pale, milky gold, you step into your workshop, the heart of your home and your soul. The room is filled with a scent that is uniquely yours, a heady, comforting mixture of sweet copal incense and the faint, organic musk of dried plumage. It is a smell that lingers in your hair and settles into the fibers of your clothes, a constant reminder of your station. On the low wooden tables, the tools of your trade are laid out with a precision that borders on the religious. There are the sharpened obsidian blades for trimming the tiniest barbs, the delicate bone needles, and the small gourds filled with translucent orchid glue, harvested with care to ensure it holds for an eternity. But it is the feathers themselves that draw your eye, arranged in cedar boxes to protect them from the humidity of the lake. You reach out, your calloused fingertips barely brushing the surface of a bundle of Quetzal plumes. They feel like nothing at all, a weightless, silken whisper against your skin. And yet, when the light hits them, they erupt into a vibrant, iridescent green that seems to pulse with its own internal fire. These are the feathers of the sacred birds from the distant, misty cloud forests of the south, brought to you by long lines of porters who travel hundreds of leagues just so you might turn them into a crown fit for a god-king. You take your seat on a low stool, feeling the familiar ache in your lower back settle into a dull, manageable thrum. The morning light is stronger now, streaming through the doorway and illuminating the dust motes that dance in the air like tiny sparks of gold. You pick up a single yellow parrot feather, turning it slowly between your thumb and forefinger. You notice the way the light catches the tiny interlocking barbs, a miracle of natural engineering that you have spent decades learning to manipulate. To be Amanteca is to live in a world of minute details, where a single misplaced hair or a drop of sweat could ruin a masterpiece intended for Moctezuma himself. As you begin the slow process of sorting, the workshop becomes a sanctuary of silence and focus. You hear the soft, rhythmic scuffing of your apprentices in the outer courtyard, preparing the maguey paper backings, but in here the only sound is the dry, papery rustle of the plumage. It is a sound like falling leaves, or the breath of a sleeping child, a sound that lulls the mind into a state of meditative calm. You think of the birds these feathers came from, the cotingas, the spoonbills, and the hummingbirds, and you feel a profound sense of connection to the wild, vibrant world beyond the city walls. You are the bridge between the forest and the throne, the one who takes the fleeting beauty of the sky and fixes it into a form that will endure. The work is slow, agonizingly so to an outsider, but to you, time has a different quality when you are at the bench. You might spend the entire morning simply selecting the perfect shades of turquoise to create a gradient on a ceremonial shield, or carefully stripping the quills from a dozen tiny feathers to ensure they lie perfectly flat against the backing. Your vision narrows until the entire universe consists only of the few square inches of the frame before you. The cold stone under your feet is forgotten. The hunger in your stomach is a distant thought. There is only the color, the texture, and the steady, unwavering movement of your hands. As the sun climbs higher, warming the walls of the Amantla district, you feel a deep, quiet pride in the lineage you carry. Your father sat in this very spot, as did his father before him, perfecting the techniques that allow a man to weave light into fabric. You are part of a guild that is whispered about in the furthest reaches of the empire, a group of artisans who are exempted from the common tributes because your contribution is deemed more precious than gold. Gold is heavy and cold, a product of the earth, but feathers belong to the air. They represent the soul's ability to transcend the mundane, to rise above the dust and the heat of the valley and touch the hem of the heavens. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes rest by looking out toward the distant mountains, their peaks still capped with a fringe of white clouds. The city of Tenochtitlan is fully awake now, a vibrant tapestry of sound and color. But here in your corner of Amantla, the peace remains unbroken. You take a deep breath, drawing in the scent of the copal and the dry, sweet smell of the cedar boxes. You feel the weight of your history and the lightness of your medium, a perfect balance of the earthly and the divine. With a steady hand and a heart slowed to the pace of the shifting shadows, you return to your work, placing one tiny, brilliant blue feather exactly where it belongs, beginning the long journey toward a creation that will capture the sun itself. The rhythm of your breathing matches the rhythmic tapping of the wind against the reed mats, a steady pulse that connects your heartbeat to the heartbeat of the workshop. You are not merely an artisan. You are a link in a chain that stretches back into the mists of time, a guardian of secrets that were never meant for the ears of common men. This knowledge is your inheritance, passed down through the blood in your veins and the calluses on your fingertips. You remember, as a small child, sitting at your father's feet, watching his hands move with the grace of a dancing bird, and how he spoke of the god Coyotl Inahual, the coyote in disguise. He is your patron, the one who wears the skin of the coyote and the feathers of the forest, the master of transformation who teaches that to create something beautiful, one must first become a vessel for the divine. To serve Coyotl Inahual is to walk a narrow path of discipline and devotion. You feel the hollow ache in your stomach, a familiar companion these last few days, for you have been fasting since the moon was full. This hunger is not a burden. It is a cleansing, a way to sharpen your senses until you can feel the vibration of the air and hear the silent songs of the feathers. You have bathed in the cold waters of the canal at dawn, washing away the dust of the mundane world, and you have burned the sacred resins until your clothes carry the scent of the heavens. Only a body that is pure can touch the plumes of the Quetzal without tarnishing their spirit. You look at your hands, lean and steady, and you know they are ready to serve as the god's own instruments. The craft is not just a job, it is a liturgy performed in silence and silk. As you look around the room, you see the others who share this sacred space, each at a different stage of their journey. In the corner, the young apprentices sit with their heads bowed, their tasks humble but essential. They are the ones who sort the thousands of common feathers, separating the down from the quill, learning the weight and texture of every bird that flies over the valley. You remember being like them, spending years just learning how to mix the natural glues from the roots of orchids, or how to prepare the maguey paper that serves as the hidden skeleton for your masterpieces. They watch you with wide, reverent eyes, for to them you are a master, a man who has earned the right to touch the iridescent greens and the deep royal purples. You feel the weight of their gaze, a reminder that you are responsible for carrying the flame of the Amanteca into the next generation, ensuring that the secrets of the knot and the adhesive are never lost to the wind. The social hierarchy of the guild is as structured as the feathers on a wing, and you find comfort in this order. There is a place for everyone, from the boys who run to the market for fresh supplies to the elder masters who sit in the centre of the hall, their eyes clouded by age, but their minds sharp with the memory of 1,000 headdresses. They are the keepers of the ancient patterns, the ones who decide which colours represent the gods and which represent the earth. You move among them with a quiet step, your sandals whispering against the polished floor, feeling the invisible threads of respect and tradition that bind you all together. It is a brotherhood of the spirit, a community defined by the shared pursuit of a beauty that transcends the human lifespan. You recall the stories your grandfather told you, whispered in the dark when the city was quiet, about how Coyotl Inahual first taught the ancestors to capture the light of the sun in the plumage of birds. He told you that the feathers are not dead things, but are filled with the life force of the creatures they once belonged to, and that your task is to weave those lives back together into a new form that honors the gods. As you pick up a long tapering quill, you feel a faint warmth, a phantom heat from a bird that once soared over the steaming jungles of the south. You treat it with the tenderness of a mother holding a child, for you know that if you show the feather respect, it will lay flat and true against the frame. The god is watching through the shadows, his coyote eyes gleaming with the wisdom of the wild, and you find yourself moving with a newfound deliberate slowness, honoring the patronage that makes your work possible. There is a specific stillness that comes with the mastery of your station, a quietude that settles in your shoulders and staves off the fatigue of the long hours. You are no longer just a man working with glue and thread. You are a participant in a cosmic order. The secrets your father whispered to you, the exact pressure needed to curve a quill without snapping it, the secret mixture of copper and herbs that keeps the colours from fading. These are the treasures of your house. They are more valuable than the gold that the merchants bring from the coast, for gold can be melted, but the knowledge of the Amanteca is eternal as long as one heart remains to beat for the craft. You watch as an apprentice struggles with a stubborn bit of down, his fingers trembling slightly with frustration. You walk over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, and you feel the tension leave his body. You do not need to speak. You simply guide his hand, showing him how to breathe into the work, how to let the feather find its own place rather than forcing it. This is the way of the guild, a slow, patient unfolding of skill, a gradual tempering of the soul, until it is as resilient as the obsidian blade you use to trim the edges. The boy nods, his eyes clearing, and you return to your own bench, satisfied that the lineage remains strong. The god Coyotl Inahual smiles in the flickering lamplight, and the work continues, one feather at a time, weaving the sacred and the mundane into a tapestry of light that will one day grace the brow of a king. The scent of damp earth and distant salt air begins to drift through the open courtyard, a subtle reminder of the world beyond the high stone walls of the Amanteca district. You pause for a moment, resting your hands on the cool, smooth surface of your workbench, feeling the slight tremor of a heavy cart passing in the street outside. It is the sound of the empire's heartbeat, the arrival of the great caravans. These are the long-distance merchants, the Moctezuma, who have travelled for months through the tangled jungles of the Mayan territories and the sun-drenched coastal plains of the Aztec region, just to bring the treasures of the world to your doorstep. You can almost feel the weight of their journeys in the air, a density of humidity and foreign soil that clings to the bundles now being unloaded at the central markets. As you stand, the slight stiffness in your lower back reminds you of the hours spent hunched over your work, yet there is a quiet anticipation that pulls you toward the storage chests in the corner of your workshop. You move slowly, your sandals whispering against the polished floor, the sound echoing softly in the stillness of the afternoon. You reach for a heavy bundle wrapped in coarse maggie fibre, its surface rough and utilitarian, hiding the brilliance contained within. When you loosen the knots, the fibre gives way with a dry, rasping sound, and suddenly the room seems to brighten. Thousands of feathers spill out in a silent, shimmering cascade, tribute from the tropical lowlands, sent as a sign of submission and reverence to the great speaker in Tenochtitlan. You reach out, your fingertips brushing against a cluster of Quetzal plumes, and the sensation is like touching a cool, liquid silk. These are not merely feathers, they are the concentrated essence of the forest canopy, a deep, iridescent green that shifts to gold and then to blue as you tilt them in the light. You remember the stories the merchants tell of the high cloud forests, where the air is thin and the mist never truly lifts, and how the hunters must wait in absolute silence for the precise moment to capture these birds without harming a single barb. To damage a tail feather is to diminish the divine. You hold one up, marvelling at its length, nearly 3 feet of pure, swaying elegance, and you think of how the expansion of the empire is driven not just by the need for grain or stone, but by the hunger for this specific ethereal beauty. The Aztec armies marched to the edges of the known world so that you, in the quiet of your home, might have the materials to clothe a god. Beneath the green of the Quetzal, you find the startling electric blue of the Cotinga. These feathers are small, no larger than a thumbprint, yet their color is so intense it feels as though it might burn the eyes. It is a blue that does not exist in the minerals of the earth or the dyes of the weaver. It is a blue snatched directly from the highest vault of the midday sky. You carefully sort them into small ceramic bowls, the light clicking of the feathers against the clay sounding like the wings of a moth. The sheer volume of the tribute is staggering, thousands upon thousands of these tiny blue sparks, each one harvested from the deep jungles of the south. You consider the vast trade networks that make this possible, the way the roads stretch out like silver threads from the great temple, binding distant Mayan lords to the will of your city. They pay their taxes in color, in the weightless currency of the air. Further down in the bundle, you discover the soft, rose-hued plumes of the spoonbill, their pink edges fading into a creamy white like the first light of a winter dawn. They feel different, thicker, sturdier, yet with a downy softness that provides the necessary volume for the base of a headdress. You run a hand over them, feeling the subtle warmth they seem to retain, a lingering memory of the sun-warmed marshes where the birds once waded. It is a meditative process, this sorting of the empire's wealth. Your mind wanders to the maps you have seen etched in bark paper, the way the borders of the Aztec influence have pushed ever outward, creeping toward the coasts, hungry for the scarlet of the macaw and the yellow of the parrot. Every new conquest brings a new palette to your bench, a new way to describe the glory of the heavens through the medium of the earth. The room is quiet now, save for the rhythmic breathing of the apprentice in the other room and the occasional cry of a bird from the courtyard garden. You take a moment to simply sit with these materials, letting the sheer variety of the tribute settle in your mind. You think of the porters who carried these bundles over mountain passes and through rain-swollen rivers, their muscles aching under the weight of beauty. You think of the clerks who recorded every single feather in the great tribute rolls, their reed pens scratching across the paper to ensure that not a single cotinga blue was lost in transit. All of this effort, all of this movement across hundreds of miles culminates here, in the stillness of your hands. The empire's expansion is often spoken of in terms of blood and obsidian, of warriors and tribute in gold. But as you look at the iridescent piles before you, you know the truth is more delicate. The heart of the empire beats for the aesthetic, for the ability to transform the wild, chaotic beauty of the tropical lowlands into the ordered, sacred geometry of a royal headdress. You pick up a single tiny yellow feather, so light you can barely feel it against your skin, and you realize that the strength of Tenochtitlan is built on things as fragile as this. The desire to possess the light of the sun and the depth of the forest is what drives the march of the legions. As the afternoon light begins to soften, casting long amber shadows across the floor, you start to organize the feathers by shade and texture. It is a slow, rhythmic task that allows your thoughts to drift like the clouds over the lake. You imagine the Mayan territories, places you will never visit, but whose essence you know intimately through the touch of your fingers. You can almost smell the rotting leaves of the jungle floor and the heavy, sweet scent of orchids that these birds once flew among. The tribute bundles are more than just supplies. They are a bridge between worlds, a way for the humid, vibrant life of the coast to be woven into the cold, stone dignity of the highland capital. You feel a deep sense of responsibility as you tuck the roseate spoonbill feathers into their protective leather pouches. These are the gifts of the earth, surrendered to the empire, and it is your task to ensure their sacrifice was not in vain. You are the final architect of their journey, the one who will take these disparate fragments of the natural world and assemble them into a singular vision of power. The ache in your shoulders seems to fade as you work, replaced by a quiet, steady focus. The world outside may be full of politics and trade, of shifting borders and rising tensions. But here, in the amber glow of your workshop, there is only the color, the texture, and the slow, deliberate breath of a craftsman at peace. You look once more at the Quetzal plumes, their green fire dimming slightly as the sun dips lower, yet they still seem to glow with an inner light. You know that tomorrow the work will begin in earnest. The cutting, the gluing, the tying of knots that must hold for a century. But for now, it is enough to simply be the keeper of these treasures, the one who holds the beauty of the lowlands in the palm of a calloused hand. The empire is vast, and its reach is long, but its ultimate expression is found in the silence of this room, in the careful preservation of a single perfect feather. You close the last of the bundles, the maguey fibre rough against your skin, and prepare yourself for the rest that comes before the creation. The scent of damp earth and crushed fern leaves seems to cling to the very fibres of the bundles you have just stowed away, a lingering ghost of the high canopy that travels hundreds of miles to reach your workshop here in the heart of Tenochtitlan. You allow your hands to rest upon the cool stone of your workbench, feeling the slight grit of volcanic dust beneath your palms, and you think of the place where these treasures began. Far to the south, where the mountains of the Maya rise to meet the heavy, moisture-laden clouds, the Pharomacrus Mochino makes its home. It is a world of perpetual mist and emerald shadow, a place so high and so silent that the air itself feels thick with the breath of the gods. In those distant cloud forests, the Quetzal lives as a creature of the air and the light, its breast the colour of a fresh wound, and its back a shimmering iridescent green that shifts between gold and turquoise with every tilt of the wing. You have never seen the bird in flight yourself, yet you know its spirit through the way the feathers behave in your hands. They are not merely objects, they are fragments of the forest's own soul. The bird is a shy inhabitant of the canopy, nesting in the hollows of decaying trees, where it feeds on the wild avocado and the small fruits of the laurel. It is a creature of balance, moving with a grace that seems almost liquid, its presence marked only by the occasional flash of metallic green through the swirling fog. To the people of the mountains, the Quetzal is far more than a source of ornament. It is a sacred messenger, a living manifestation of the breath of life. And because it is sacred, its life is protected by laws as old as the mountains themselves. You think of the hunters, the trappers who move through the undergrowth with the silence of a shadow, and the immense patience required of their craft. They do not use arrows or stones to bring the Quetzal down. To kill such a bird is a crime against the divine order, a theft of beauty that can never be repaid. Instead, they use blowguns with small pellets of clay to momentarily stun the bird, or they set intricate snares made of fine cordage near the fruiting trees where the birds gather to feed. The moment of capture is a delicate ritual of respect. The trapper's hands, calloused and steady, gently grasp the bird, taking care not to ruffle the precious plumage. With a practiced, swift motion, the long twin tail feathers are plucked, those magnificent streamers that the male bird grows with such pride. Once the harvest is complete, the bird is released back into the misty heights, unharmed and free to grow its feathers once more for the coming season. It is a cycle of renewal, a harvest that takes but does not destroy, ensuring that the lineage of the Quetzal continues long after the current emperor has passed into the realm of the ancestors. You find a deep sense of peace in this knowledge, knowing that the beauty you work with is not born of death, but of a careful, enduring partnership between man and the wild. As you sit in the growing dimness of your room, you can almost feel the physical weight of those feathers as they must have looked when first taken. The primary tail feathers are a marvel of nature's engineering, sometimes reaching a length of 3 feet or more. They are incredibly light, almost weightless in the hand, yet they possess a structural integrity that allows them to trail behind the bird like silken ribbons in the wind. When you hold one, you notice how the light catches the microscopic structures of the barbs, creating a color that is not a pigment, but a reflection of the sky and the leaves. It is a green so deep and vibrant that it seems to pulse with a hidden light of its own, a hue that the common dyes of the marketplace can never hope to replicate. This particular shade of green carries a weight of meaning that transcends mere aesthetics. To your people, it is the color of the young maize pushing through the dark soil after the first rains. It is the color of growth, of vitality, and of the earth's inexorable urge to provide for its children. When the emperor, Moctezuma, wears a headdress fashioned from these plumes, he is not simply draped in luxury, he is cloaked in the very essence of fertility. He becomes a living symbol of the agricultural cycle, a bridge between the celestial rains and the thirsty fields of the valley. The swaying of the feathers as he moves mimics the rustling of the corn stalks in the breeze, a visual prayer for abundance that everyone from the highest noble to the lowliest farmer understands in their very marrow. The physical properties of the feathers dictate the rhythm of your work. Because they are so long and so flexible, they catch every stray current of air, dancing with a life of their own, even when the room is still. You must learn to work with this movement, to anticipate the way a 3-foot plume will drape over a frame of bamboo and wicker. You think of the strength required in those delicate shafts, the way they taper to a point as fine as a needle, yet remain resilient enough to withstand the journey from the southern highlands to the markets of Tlatelolco. There is a quiet dignity in their length, a sense of grandeur that demands a spaciousness of thought and action. You cannot rush a work that involves such grace. You must slow your own heartbeat to match the steady, rhythmic growth of the bird itself. Outside, the sounds of the city are beginning to soften. The constant thrum of the canals, the distant calls of the vendors, and the footsteps of the porters are all fading into the background of the evening. But in your mind, you are still in the cloud forest, listening to the drip of water from the broad leaves and the haunting melodic call of the Quetzal. You imagine the bird resting now in its high sanctuary, its tail beginning the slow process of regeneration, unaware that its previous year's growth now sits in a darkened room in the capital, waiting to be transformed into something eternal. The relationship is a profound one. The bird provides the raw material of divinity, and you, the featherworker, provide the hands that shape it into a form fit for a god-king. As you lean back against the cool wall, the ache in your shoulders begins to subside, replaced by a heavy, comfortable warmth. You realize that your understanding of the Quetzal is what allows you to be a master of your craft. You do not just see a feather, you see the moisture of the cloud forest, the patience of the trapper, and the promise of the coming harvest. You see the 3 feet of shimmering green as a measure of time and a testament to the world's hidden riches. The feathers are a gift from the heights, a reminder that even in the heart of a bustling empire, the sacred rhythms of the natural world remain the true foundation of all things. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the image of the green plumes drift through your thoughts like smoke. They are the most precious currency of the empire, more valuable than gold or jade, because they represent life in its purest, most vibrant form. To hold them is to hold the power of the sun and the rain, captured in a shimmering, flexible spine. Tomorrow you will begin the process of sorting them by length and luster. But for tonight, it is enough to simply exist in the quiet space they have created. The world of the Quetzal is far away in leagues, but it is here with you in spirit, tucked safely within the maguey bundles, waiting for the light of a new day to reveal its splendor once again. A single drop of oil from a nearby lamp catches the light, and you realize that the silence of the workshop is not truly empty, but rather a vessel waiting to be filled with the order of the natural world. Your hands, calloused slightly from years of handling fine tools, reach out to the first bundle of maguey fiber. As you untie the knots, the air seems to change, growing thick with the scent of the highlands and the faint, musky perfume of the birds themselves. You do not rush. The work of a featherworker, an Amanteca, is as much about the patience of the mind as it is about the skill of the fingers. Before a single feather can be glued or stitched to a frame, it must be understood. It must be recognized for its unique character, its strength and its place within the great celestial spectrum. You begin the slow, rhythmic task of sorting. You spread a clean, woven mat across the floor, feeling the slight chill of the stone beneath your knees, a sensation that keeps you grounded, while your eyes wander through a sea of color. Your fingers move with a lightness that belies your fatigue, separating the long, sweeping tail feathers of the Quetzal from the shorter, sturdier plumes of the parrot and the hummingbird. You categorize them first by their size, laying the great emerald streamers in one row, their iridescent barbs shimmering like liquid light as they catch the flickering flame. Beside them, you place the medium feathers, those that will provide the structural integrity for the headdress, the bones upon which the beauty will hang. Finally, You attend to the smallest downy tufts, soft as a summer cloud, which will be used to fill the gaps and create a texture so smooth it defies the touch. As you work, you reach for your specialized tools, the extensions of your own will that allow you to interact with such delicate materials. You pick up a pair of tweezers carved from aged bamboo, their tips polished until they are smooth enough to grip a single barb without bruising it. With these, you lift a feather of deep scarlet, a plume from the roseate spoonbill, and hold it up to the light. You are looking for more than just color. You are looking for the integrity of the quill and the way the light dances across the surface. You use a small brush made from the finest beaten fibers of the agave plant to gently stroke the barbs back into place, smoothing away the ruffles of travel until the feather looks as though it has just grown from the wing of a living god. The sound of the brush is a faint, dry whisper against the silence of the room, a rhythmic shushing that marks the passing of the hours. The palette before you begins to take shape, a visual harmony that mirrors the world outside the temple walls. You arrange the feathers in a gradient that feels like a prayer. There is the turquoise of the shallow waters shifting into the deep, bruised purple of a gathering storm. There is the brilliant yellow of the midday sun, placed carefully beside the burning orange of a dying fire. You find yourself lost in the transition from deep scarlet to a pink so pale it is almost white, the color of the first light touching the snow-capped peaks of the volcanoes. Each hue has its own weight, its own spirit. You know that to place a feather of the wrong shade is to disrupt the balance of the entire universe, for the headdress of Moctezuma is not merely an ornament, but a map of the cosmos itself. To protect these treasures from the hunger of the world, you move toward the heavy wooden chests that line the far wall. These are carved from cedar and cypress, the wood itself a barrier against the dampness of the valley air. As you lift the lid of the first chest, the scent of dried herbs rises to meet you. Tobacco, white copal, and bitter wormwood. You have layered the bottom of the chest with these aromatic plants, a fragrant defense against the tiny moths and beetles that would otherwise turn this celestial plumage into dust. You lay the sorted feathers inside, placing them on beds of soft cotton, ensuring that no quill is bent and no barb is crushed. The act of closing the lid feels like a benediction. You are the guardian of this light, keeping it safe until the moment it is summoned to crown the head of a king. Your back begins to ache with a dull, steady thrum, a reminder of the hours you have spent hunched over your work. You shift your weight, feeling the coarse weave of your cotton tunic rub against your skin, and you take a moment to simply breathe. The air in the workshop is cool now, the heat of the day having long since bled away into the night. You look at your hands, stained slightly by the natural oils of the feathers, and you feel a profound sense of connection to the generations of Amanteca who stood in this very spot before you. They, too, felt the weight of the bamboo tweezers. They, too, marveled at the way a single feather could contain the entire spectrum of the rainbow. You reach for a small bowl of water, the ceramic cool against your palms, and take a slow sip. The water is crisp, tasting of the mountain springs that feed the city's aqueducts. As you swallow, you watch the way the ripples in the bowl catch the golden light of the lamp, mirroring the iridescence of the feathers you have just put away. Everything is connected: the water, the light, the bird, and the man. You realize that your task is not just to build a headdress, but to weave these disparate elements into a single, unified expression of divine authority. The sorting is the foundation of that unity. Without the careful categorization of every hue and every length, the final work would lack the rhythm that makes it sing. As you prepare to extinguish the last of the lamps, you take one final look at the workspace. The mats are clear, the tools are cleaned and aligned, and the great wooden chests sit in the shadows like silent sentinels. The chaotic vibrancy of the morning has been tamed into an orderly peace. You feel the exhaustion finally beginning to settle into your limbs, a heavy, velvet weight that pulls at your shoulders and slows your heartbeat. The stone floor feels softer now, or perhaps you are simply drifting further away from the physical world and closer to the realm of dreams, where the birds of the rainforest fly through skies of liquid gold. You walk toward your sleeping mat, the sound of your footsteps a soft padding against the floor. The wood smoke from a distant hearth drifts through the high window, a familiar, comforting scent that speaks of home and safety. You wrap your wool cloak tightly around your shoulders, the fabric heavy and warm, and lie down. As you close your eyes, the colors of the day continue to dance behind your eyelids, flashes of emerald, streaks of crimson, and the deep, endless blue of the tropical sky. You are no longer just a craftsman. You are a part of the light you serve, a single thread in a tapestry that stretches from the earth to the stars. The quiet of the workshop envelops you, and the rhythmic memory of the agave brush lulls you toward a deep and restorative sleep. The scent of split reeds and dried agave fiber lingers in the air of your workspace, a sharp, grassy aroma that signals the beginning of a new labor. You reach out with calloused fingers to touch the raw materials laid across your low wooden table, feeling the smooth, waxy skin of the reeds and the coarse, slightly prickly texture of the maguey twine. This is the moment where the ethereal beauty of the feathers must meet the grounded reality of physics. You are about to build the spine of the sacred, the hidden skeleton that will allow the Quetzal Coyotl to stand tall against the wind and the weight of its own splendor. It is a task of quiet, rhythmic precision, requiring you to balance the strength of the earth with the lightness of the air. You begin by selecting the finest reeds, harvested from the marshy edges of the lake when the moon was in the correct quarter, to ensure they are neither too brittle nor too green. These are the bones of the cacaxtli, the internal framework that must remain invisible to the eye, but present in every movement of the wearer. You feel the weight of a small, sharp obsidian blade in your hand, its edge colder than the morning air. With practiced ease, you shave the reeds down, thinning them until they possess a delicate flexibility. You bend one, testing its tension against your palm. It gives way with a soft, creaking protest before snapping back into a perfect arc. It must be strong enough to support hundreds of long, trailing plumes, yet light enough that the Emperor Moctezuma feels only the grace of the gods upon his brow, rather than a burden of man-made wood. As you work, the rhythmic scraping of the blade becomes a lullaby, a steady beat that marks the passage of the afternoon. You take the maguey twine, which you have spent hours rolling and thinning between your palms, until it is as strong as sinew but as fine as a spider's silk. You begin to lash the reeds together, crossing them in a complex geometric lattice. The knots are small and tight, pulled with a steady pressure that makes the skin of your fingers tingle. Each intersection is a promise of stability. You think of the way a bird's wing is constructed, hollow bones and light membranes, and you mimic that divine engineering. The cacaxtli begins to take shape, a curved, fan-like cage that mirrors the arc of the horizon. You lift the frame, resting it momentarily against your own forehead to test the balance. It is a moment of deep connection to the future wearer. You can feel the way the center of gravity shifts with the slightest tilt of your head. If it is too heavy in the front, the emperor will be forced to look at the ground. If it is too heavy in the back, his chin will be tilted toward the sun in a way that lacks dignity. You adjust a reed here, tighten a cord there, feeling the subtle vibrations of the wood against your skin. The engineering must be perfect, for these ceremonies last many hours, and the headdress must remain a seamless extension of the ruler's own body, swaying with his gait like the leaves of a willow tree. Once the skeleton is sound, you turn your attention to the thin, light woods that will form the outer rim. These pieces are so thin they are translucent when held up to the oil lamp, yet they provide the necessary surface area for the first layers of feathers to cling to. You apply a thin glaze of orchid glue, a sticky, sweet-smelling resin that you have prepared by boiling the bulbs of the Tlatoani plant. The warmth of the glue seeps into the wood, and the scent fills your senses, a floral, earthy perfume that speaks of the deep forest. Now comes the work of the first backing, the foundation upon which the sacred emerald plumes will eventually rest. You do not start with the precious feathers of the tropics. Instead, you reach for the common feathers, the soft, downy plumes of the heron and the duck. These are the humble servants of the headdress, the hidden layers that provide volume and a soft cushion for the more brilliant feathers to follow. You pick up a white heron feather, its barbs so fine they seem to dissolve into a mist between your fingers. You lay it against the frame, smoothing it down with the side of your thumb. The sensation is incredibly soft, a fleeting touch that reminds you of a cloud passing over the sun. One by one you overlap these base feathers, creating a dense quilted surface. You work from the bottom upward, each row covering the quills of the one below it, just as the scales of a fish or the shingles of a rooftop protect what lies beneath. The repetitive motion, dip the quill in glue, place the feather, smooth the edges, becomes a form of meditation. Your breathing slows to match the pace of your hands. The world outside the workshop, with its bustling markets and distant temple drums, fades into a soft hum. There is only the frame, the glue, and the feathers. You notice the way the light catches the white feathers, turning them into a shimmering field of silver. Even these common birds possess a quiet beauty when arranged with such care. You are building a landscape in miniature, a valley of soft down that will soon be covered by a forest of green. The physical toll of the day begins to settle into your shoulders, a dull, not unpleasant ache that speaks of honest labor. You shift your weight on the woven mat, feeling the cool stone floor beneath you, a grounding contrast to the airy lightness of the object in your lap. As the first layer of backing is completed, you hold the headdress out at arm's length. It no longer looks like a collection of sticks and string. It has begun to breathe. The feathers stir slightly in the draft from the doorway, a gentle, rhythmic pulsing that makes the object seem alive. You run your hand over the surface, feeling the uniform softness, the way the feathers yield to your touch and then spring back into place. This is the structural integrity that will hold the weight of the Quetzal plumes, the secret strength that ensures the headdress will not wilt under the heat of the sun or the dampness of the lake air. The maguey twine, hidden now beneath the white down, holds everything in a firm embrace. You think of the farmers who grew the agave, the women who spun the fibers, and the hunters who gathered the heron feathers from the reeds. You are the point where all their lives converge, the one who weaves their disparate efforts into a single, sacred whole. The interconnectedness of your world feels tangible here, held between your hands in the form of a half-finished crown. The shadows in the room are lengthening, stretching across the floor like long, dark fingers. The orange glow of the setting sun filters through the high window, hitting the white feathers and turning them for a brief moment into a sheet of hammered gold. You pause, letting your hands rest in your lap. The silence of the evening is profound, broken only by the distant call of a night bird and the soft rustle of the wind in the trees outside. You feel a deep sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction in the hidden architecture you have created. It is a sturdy house for the beauty that is yet to come. You take a final look at the cacaxtli, ensuring every reed is aligned and every knot is secure. The balance is true. The weight is negligible. You lean back, stretching your spine, hearing the faint, satisfying pop of your vertebrae. The day's work is etched into the muscles of your arms and the clarity of your mind. As you prepare to set the frame aside for the glue to dry completely overnight, you feel a sense of readiness. The foundation is laid. The structure is sound. Tomorrow, the colors will come, but tonight, the white and the wood are enough. You move slowly now, your movements fluid and heavy with the onset of rest. You place the headdress on its specialized stand, a carved wooden block that mimics the shape of a human head. In the dimming light, it looks like a ghost, a pale, shimmering crescent waiting to be filled with the spirit of the sky. You wash the remaining glue from your hands with cool water, the liquid whisking away the stickiness and leaving your skin refreshed. You wrap your cloak around you, the familiar weight of the fabric providing a final layer of comfort. As you prepare to lie down, the image of the frame remains in your mind, a perfect union of earth and air, waiting in the stillness for the dawn. The scent of the workshop at night is different than it is by day. It is a heavy, vegetal perfume that clings to the thatch of the roof and the weave of your tunic. It is the smell of the Coyotl orchid, the secret heart of your craft, sitting in a ceramic bowl by your sleeping mat. You reach out a hand in the darkness, your fingers brushing the cool, smooth side of the vessel, and you think of the journey those bulbs took to reach your table. They were gathered from the humid slopes of the cloud forests, pulled from the bark of ancient trees where they clung like pale, waxy jewels. To look at the raw bulb, one would never guess the strength hidden within its pulp. It is a modest thing, earthy and quiet. Yet it is the only substance in the Triple Alliance capable of binding the soul of a bird to the frame of a king. You remember the labour of the morning, the rhythmic thud of the stone pestle as you ground the orchid roots into a fine translucent paste. It is a task that requires a singular kind of focus, a meditative repetition that clears the mind of all but the texture of the mash. You cannot rush the Coyotl. If you strike too hard, the fibers bruise. If you are too tentative, the glue remains lumpy and weak. You worked until your shoulders throbbed, with a dull, familiar ache, watching for that precise moment when the mixture transformed, when it became a shimmering, viscous syrup that trailed from your stirring stick like liquid moonlight. This is the ancient chemistry of your people, a knowledge passed down through generations of featherworkers, taught to you when your hands were still small and clumsy. It is a chemistry of the senses, requiring you to smell the sweetness of the sap and feel the exact resistance of the liquid against your skin. The consistency must be perfect, for the feathers of the Quetzal and the Cotinga are temperamental spirits. If the glue is too thin, it will soak into the delicate barbs, matting the iridescent filaments and turning a masterpiece into a sodden, dull rag. If it is too thick, it will sit in heavy ridges, adding unnecessary weight to a headdress that must feel as light as a summer breeze upon the ruler's brow. You spent hours adjusting the mixture with drops of water, testing a bead of it between your thumb and forefinger, over and over again, feeling for that tacky, insistent pull that signals the glue is ready to hold. It must be strong enough to withstand the wind as the emperor dances, yet gentle enough to respect the fragile anatomy of a plume that was grown in the canopy of a distant jungle. Beside the bowl of adhesive lie your tools, resting on a scrap of soft deerskin. You can see their silhouettes in the dim light, the slender copper knives with blades honed to a terrifying sharpness, and the spatulas carved from the bones of eagles. You prefer the bone tools for the most delicate work. There is a porousness to the bone that seems to understand the glue better than metal ever could. As you drift towards sleep, your mind rehearses the movements of the coming dawn, the way you will dip the tip of the spatula into the Coyotl, lifting just enough to coat the quill of a feather. You will apply it with a steady hand, a single fluid stroke that leaves no room for error. There is a profound silence in that moment of application, a suspension of breath as the earth-born glue meets the sky-born feather. The valley air is thick tonight, carrying the dampness of the lake and the lingering humidity of the afternoon rains. This moisture is your silent partner and your greatest challenge. In the highlands, the glue sets with a stubborn slowness, demanding a patience that few men possess. You cannot force the drying process. You cannot place the work near a fire. for the heat would warp the reed frame and shrivel the delicate plumes. Instead, you must wait. You must allow each layer to set in its own time, letting the air of Tenochtitlan breathe upon the work until the bond is permanent. It is a lesson in humility, a reminder that despite your skill, you are subject to the whims of the atmosphere and the temperament of the orchid. You think of the layers you have already laid down, the hidden foundation of common feathers that provide the structural support for the treasures to come. Each one was placed with the same care as the most expensive Quetzal plume, for a flaw in the foundation will eventually reveal itself in the finished piece. You remember the feel of the copper knife as you trimmed the quills, the slight resistance of the hollow shaft before the blade sliced through with a clean, satisfying snap. The scraps of feather and droplets of dried glue are scattered across the floor of your workspace, a map of the day's labor that you will sweep away when the sun rises. But for now, they are part of the room's texture, a testament to the slow, incremental progress that defines your life. The chemistry of the featherworker is not just in the glue, but in the preparation of the surfaces. You recall how you rubbed the maguey paper with a smooth volcanic stone until it took on a dull sheen, creating a surface that would accept the adhesive without drinking it dry. Your fingertips still feel a bit smooth from the friction, a tactile memory of the hours spent prepping the canvas for this sacred geometry. Everything must be balanced. The moisture of the orchid, the dryness of the paper, the oil of your skin. Even the sweat from your palms must be managed, wiped away frequently on your cloak, so as not to tarnish the brilliance of the colors. It is an exhausting way to work, a constant vigilance over the smallest details, yet it brings a peace that you find nowhere else. As you lie there, the rhythmic sound of the distant lake water lapping against the stone piers lulls you deeper into the blankets. You imagine the glue drying on the frame in the next room, the molecules of the orchid bulb tightening their grip, turning from a liquid into a transparent, rock-hard bond. By morning, the base will be firm, a sturdy skeleton ready to be clothed in the green and gold of the gods. You find yourself marveling at the alchemy of it all, how a simple root from the forest floor can be transformed into the invisible force that holds a kingdom's glory together. It is a quiet power, one that remains unseen in the final headdress, buried beneath the dazzling display of plumage, but you know it is there. You know that without the humble Coyotl, the feathers would simply scatter like leaves in the wind. The darkness of the room feels protective now, a velvet shroud that mirrors the deep shadows of the workshop. You can almost feel the weight of the copper knife in your hand, the balance of it, the way it becomes an extension of your own will. You think of the bone spatula, polished by years of use until it fits the curve of your palm perfectly. These tools are your companions, sharers in the long hours of silence and the intense bursts of creation. They are resting now, just as you are, gathering their strength for the precision that the morning will demand. The precise consistency, the steady hand, the long wait for the air to do its work. These are the rhythms of your existence. The valley is still, the only sound the occasional cry of a night bird or the soft rustle of the reeds in the breeze. You close your eyes, letting the image of the shimmering orchid paste fade into the blackness. You are a master of sticky resins and sharp edges, a guardian of the ancient secrets of adhesion. The humid air of the valley, once a source of frustration, now feels like a warm embrace, a necessary element in the slow birth of the sacred. You surrender to the heaviness of your limbs, the ache in your back softening as you sink into the mat. The chemistry of the day is done, and the chemistry of sleep begins, a slow and steady binding of the spirit to the world of dreams, as quiet and as sure as the orchid glue setting on the frame of a king. The morning light filters through the doorway in a soft, diffused column of grey and gold, illuminating the microscopic dust motes that dance in the air above your workbench. You do not reach for a brush, nor do you reach for a pigment jar. Today, your palette is composed of the sky itself, captured in the iridescent throat of a hummingbird and the deep, verdant brilliance of the Quetzal. You sit cross-legged, the cool earth beneath you providing a steadying foundation as you prepare to begin the delicate work of feather mosaic, a process that is less like building and more like breathing life into a flat, wooden surface. Before you lies a shield, its surface prepared with a thin, smooth layer of cotton and paper, waiting to receive the first whispers of colour. You pick up a single feather, so light it seems to possess no weight at all, and you feel the faint rhythmic pulse in your fingertips as you align it with the edge of a sketched design. This is the art of painting without paint. Every stroke is a plume, every highlight a reflection of light trapped within the structure of a bird's wing. You begin at the bottom, for this work must grow upward, each row overlapping the one below it like the shingles of a roof or the scales of a sacred serpent. As you lay the first row of blue cotinga feathers, you are mindful of the depth you are creating. By angling the feathers just so, you ensure that the light will catch them differently as the wearer moves, shifting from a deep midnight cobalt to a bright electric turquoise. It is a slow, methodical rhythm. Dip the bone spatula into the orchid glue, apply a translucent bead to the quill, and press it firmly but gently into place. The glue is tacky and forgiving, allowing you a few precious seconds to nudge the feather into its perfect alignment before it sets forever. You work from the periphery inward, a slow march of colour that transforms the dull wood into something celestial. Your eyes are focused on a space no wider than a thumbnail, yet in your mind the entire cosmos is taking shape. Within the centre of the mosaic, you are depicting the image of a deity, perhaps Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, his form emerging from the overlapping layers of scarlet and gold. To create the curve of his cheek or the intensity of his gaze, you must select feathers with the precision of a surgeon. You choose the smallest, downiest feathers for the soft contours of the face and the stiff, lustrous ones for the sharp lines of his regalia. There is a profound silence in the workshop, broken only by the soft rasp of your breath and the occasional rustle of a basket being moved. The world outside the temple walls, with its bustling markets and distant temple drums, fades into a muffled hum, leaving you alone with the geometry of the sacred. You notice, as you work, the way the barbs of each feather must be groomed. Using a fine, pointed stylus made of bone, you stroke the individual filaments, encouraging them to lock together. This is where the true mastery lies, in the alignment of the microscopic hooks that hold the feather's shape. If one barb is out of place, it creates a shadow, a tiny fracture in the illusion of a solid surface. You spend minutes, sometimes an hour, on a single square inch, ensuring that the transition between a deep forest green and a pale lime is seamless, a gradient that mimics the natural flow of life. It is a meditation on the smallness of things, a realization that the grandest headdress or the most formidable shield is nothing more than the sum of 1,000 perfect, tiny decisions. As the sun climbs higher, the heat in the room increases, and you feel a bead of sweat begin to form on your temple. You do not wipe it away, for fear of disturbing the delicate arrangement before you. You simply wait, letting the sensation pass, remaining as still as the stone walls around you. The symbols you are crafting are not merely decorative. They are a language. The movement of the stars, the phases of the moon, and the cycles of the earth are all encoded in these patterns. A circle of yellow parrot feathers becomes a sunburst, a jagged line of white heron plumes becomes a bolt of lightning. You are not just a craftsman, you are a translator, turning the ephemeral beauty of the natural world into a permanent testament of faith. The layering continues, row upon row, building a physical thickness that gives the mosaic a sculptural quality. When you run your hand very lightly over a finished section, it feels like silk, yet it possesses a hidden strength, the overlapping quills creating a resilient armor. You think of the birds that provided these gifts, the long journeys of the merchants who brought them from the steaming lowlands, the careful trapping and releasing that allowed the birds to regrow their treasures. There is a cycle of reciprocity here, a debt to the earth that you pay with your patience and your skill. The shimmering effect of the finished piece is almost hypnotic. As the light in the room shifts with the passing hours, the deity on the shield seems to stir. The feathers catch the stray beams, reflecting a spectrum of colors that no mineral pigment could ever hope to replicate. It is a living thing, a piece of the heavens brought down to rest in your lap. Your back aches with the prolonged strain of leaning forward, and your eyes burn from the intensity of the focus. But there is a deep, quiet satisfaction in seeing the pattern hold. The symbols are clear, the edges are sharp, and the shimmer is unbroken. As the afternoon wanes and the shadows begin to stretch across the floor, you reach the final section of the day's work. You are finishing a celestial border, a series of obsidian black feathers tipped with white, representing the stars in the night sky. Each one must be placed with absolute certainty, for the black feathers show every flaw, every stray drop of glue. You hold your breath as you set the final plume of the row, watching as it settles into the embrace of its neighbors. The mosaic is not yet complete, but the soul of the piece has arrived. It is there, in the way the light dances across the surface, a shimmering bridge between the world of men and the realm of the gods. You set down your tools, your fingers stiff but steady. The room is growing dim, the golden light turning to a soft, bruised purple as the sun dips below the mountains. You take a moment to simply look at what you have created, allowing your eyes to lose focus so that the individual feathers blur into a single, radiant vision. The fatigue is heavy now, a comfortable weight that pulls at your shoulders and settles in your hips. You have spent the day in a state of grace, a quiet dialogue with the divine, and as you prepare to leave your workbench, you carry that stillness with you. The orchid glue will dry in the dark, the feathers will bind to the wood, and tomorrow the work will begin again, one plume at a time, until the sacred is fully manifest. The scent of toasted maize and the sharp, clean aroma of copal incense lingers in the weave of your cotton tunic as you return to the workshop in the soft grey light of a new morning. Your hands, though stiff from the previous day's labour, remember the rhythm of the thread and the delicate resistance of the quills. Today, however, the atmosphere in the Amanteca quarter feels different. There is a quiet intensity that hums through the stone corridors, for the work you are about to undertake is not for a noble or a warrior, but for the Huey Tlatoani himself, Moctezuma II. To craft for the great speaker is to step beyond the realm of mere artistry and into the architecture of the divine. The requirements for his personal regalia are absolute, governed by ancient laws that dictate which colors may touch and which textures may overlap. You feel the weight of these expectations as you look upon the central frame of the headdress, a structure of light reeds and maguey fiber that must be strong enough to hold the world, yet light enough to rest upon a mortal brow. The materials gathered for this specific piece are of a quality that hums with a silent power. The Quetzal plumes are longer here, their iridescent green shifting into deep oceanic blues as you tilt them in the light, each one a gift from the high cloud forests, hand-selected for its perfection. There is no room for a broken barb or a dull hue when the wearer is the bridge between the earth and the sun, As you settle onto your mat, the coolness of the floor grounding you, you begin the process of integrating the gold. The Aztecs believe gold to be the excrement of the sun, a sacred substance that captures the eternal heat of the celestial fire. You pick up a small beaten disc of the yellow metal, its surface polished until it mirrors your own tired eyes. With a needle made of bone, you carefully stitch the gold ornament into the base of the featherwork. The metal is heavy and cold against your fingertips, a stark contrast to the weightless warmth of the plumage. You must balance these elements with extreme care. If the gold is too heavy, the headdress will sag, losing the soaring silhouette that defines the ruler's presence. But if it is too light, it will lack the gravity required of a god-king. You work with a slow, deliberate focus, sewing rows of tiny gold beads that glint like stars caught in a forest canopy. Beside the gold, you introduce the precious stones, beads of jade and turquoise that have been smoothed by the lapidaries until they feel like frozen water. These stones represent the life-giving moisture of the earth, the green of growing things, and the blue of the sky. As you bind a piece of polished jade to the center of a feather cluster, you are not just decorating a garment, you are weaving the elements of the universe together. The green of the Quetzal, the gold of the sun, and the blue of the water all meet beneath your hands, creating a map of the cosmos that Moctezuma will wear upon his head. The physical sensation of the work begins to numb your surroundings. You hear the distant calls of the marketplace and the splashing of oars in the canals, but your world has shrunk to the space between your thumb and forefinger. You think of the Huey Tlatoani, a man who lives in a palace of 100 rooms, who walks on petals so his feet never touch the bare earth, and who speaks with the authority of the gods. When he dons this headdress, the man Moctezuma will vanish, and in his place will stand the living embodiment of the state. The feathers will catch the light as he moves, creating a shimmering halo that makes him appear larger than life, a radiant being who commands the very air he breathes. This transformation depends entirely on the integrity of your knots and the precision of your placement. There is a profound responsibility in this realization, a weight of tradition that stretches back through generations of featherworkers who served the rulers of the past. You are a link in a long, unbroken chain, carrying the secrets of the craft that were whispered to you by your father, just as he heard them from his own. The expectations of the royal court are not merely about beauty, they are about cosmic order. If a single feather were out of place, if the symmetry were broken, it would be an affront to the harmony of the world. And so, you check and recheck every line, your eyes tracing the curve of the plumes as they radiate outward, like the rays of a green sun. The slow ache in your back returns, a familiar companion that speaks of hours spent in devotion. You lean back for a moment, stretching your spine, and watch as a stray breeze from the courtyard catches the long Quetzal tails. They sway with a liquid grace, 1,000 tiny filaments dancing in unison. In this moment, the headdress seems to breathe. It is no longer a collection of wood, metal, and birdskin. It has become a living thing, a vessel for the sacred power of the office. You realize that your fatigue is a small price to pay for the privilege of touching the divine, for being the one whose hands give shape to the majesty of the empire. As the afternoon shadows lengthen across the workshop floor, you reach for a small piece of red leather, dyed with the juice of the cochineal insect. This will form the inner lining, the part that will actually touch the ruler's skin. It must be soft, treated with oils until it is as supple as silk, for even the smallest irritation could distract the Tlatoani from his ritual duties. You sew it in with invisible stitches, hiding the mechanics of the construction behind the splendor of the exterior. This is the hidden labor of the Amanteca, the work that is felt but never seen, the foundation of comfort upon which the spectacle of power is built. You find yourself thinking about the silence of the palace, the way the air grows still when the ruler enters a room. You imagine him standing on the high terrace of his gardens, the wind catching these very feathers you are now touching. In that vision, the headdress is not just an object. It is a signal to the people and the gods alike that the world is in balance. The gold ornaments catch the dying light of the day, casting long, flickering reflections against the lime-washed walls of your studio. You pick up your needle once more, the silver-white thread trailing behind it like a spider's web, and continue the slow, rhythmic dance of creation. The integration of the stones and metal requires a different kind of strength in your fingers. While the feathers demand a lightness of touch, the gold requires a firm, steady hand to ensure it is anchored deeply into the frame. You feel the grit of the stone and the smooth, cold surface of the gold, a tactile reminder of the vast reaches of the empire from which these tributes flow. From the southern jungles to the highland mines, the wealth of the world is converging here, under your steady gaze. You are the weaver of this wealth, the one who harmonizes the disparate gifts of the earth into a single, unified vision of authority. As the light begins to fail, turning the vibrant greens of the Quetzal into a deep, velvety black, you set your tools down with a sigh of completion for the day's task. Your neck is stiff, and your eyes burn slightly from the strain of the fine work, but there is a profound sense of peace in your heart. The headdress is taking shape, growing more magnificent with every passing hour. It sits on the wooden stand like a sleeping deity, waiting for the moment it will be awakened by the presence of the king. You wrap your cloak tightly around your shoulders against the evening chill, the scent of the feathers still clinging to your skin, and prepare to leave the sacred space of the workshop. The tradition of your ancestors is safe in your hands, and tomorrow you will return to add the final touches of gold, ensuring that when the sun rises, the Huey Tlatoani will shine with a light that rivals the heavens themselves. The scent of the workshop lingers in your hair, a faint organic perfume of dried nectar and the sharp metallic tang of the copper needles you have held between your teeth for hours. As you step out into the cool evening air of Tenochtitlan, the stone beneath your sandals feels solid and grounding, a stark contrast to the ethereal lightness of the work you have just left behind. Your fingers, usually so nimble and quick, feel a dull ache in the joints, a reminder of the thousands of tiny knots you have tied today. You pull your cotton cloak tighter, feeling the weight of the fabric against your chest, and as you walk toward your home, your mind remains fixed on the arrangement of colors resting on the wooden frame back in the House of Birds. You think specifically of the cotinga feathers, those tiny shards of the clearest turquoise that you tucked into the lower borders of the headdress. In the dimming light of the city, they seem to glow with an inner radiance, even in your memory. To you, and to all who will gaze upon the Huey Tlatoani, this specific shade of blue is not merely a color. It is the physical manifestation of the celestial waters. It is the sky reflected in a still mountain lake, the essence of the rain that feeds the maize, and the vast, shimmering expanse of the heavens where the gods reside. As you walk, you imagine the king wearing this crown, his head enveloped in the very substance of the firmament. The blue does not just represent the sky. In the logic of your craft, it is the sky, brought down to earth through your patient labor, allowing the ruler to walk between the worlds of men and the divine. The rhythm of your footsteps on the packed earth is slow and deliberate, matching the steady beat of your heart. You find yourself looking up at the first stars, beginning to prick through the velvet indigo of the twilight, and you see the headdress reflected there. You think of the gold discs you will set into the feathers tomorrow, those heavy, polished rounds of precious metal that catch the light and throw it back with a blinding intensity. These are the eyes of the sun, the Tonatiuh, watching over the people. They are not merely decorations, but markers of the passage of time, the cyclical nature of the days and the long counts of the years. When the king turns his head, the gold will flash, a rhythmic pulse of light that mimics the heartbeat of the universe itself. You can almost feel the weight of the gold in your palm, the coolness of the metal before it is warmed by the sun's rays, and you understand that you are not just making a garment, but a solar calendar that lives and breathes. As a light breeze moves through the narrow streets, stirring the hair at your temples, you are reminded of how the long Quetzal plumes behave in the wind. This is perhaps the most sacred element of your work, the movement. A statue is beautiful, but it is static. A headdress, however, is a living thing. When the wind catches those iridescent green tails, they do not simply flutter. They ripple like the surface of a river, swaying with a grace that seems to defy gravity. To your people, this movement is the Ehecatl, the breath of life. It is the sign that the spirit is present. You recall the way the feathers danced today, when you blew a stray piece of down from the frame. A soft, rhythmic swaying that felt like a quiet conversation between the earth and the air. By binding these feathers to the frame, you are capturing the wind itself, giving the king the power to command the very breath of the world as he moves through the sacred precincts of the temple. The ache in your back seems to soften as you contemplate the cosmic order you are stitching together. The headdress is a mirror of the cosmos, a map of the Aztec universe that the ruler wears upon his brow. The lower tiers of brown and blue represent the earth and the waters, the solid foundation upon which all life rests. The rising arc of the green Quetzal feathers represents the lushness of the world and the height of the heavens, stretching upward toward the ultimate source of creation. In the center, where the gold shines brightest, is the axis of the world, the point where all forces meet. You are a weaver of reality, a cartographer of the invisible, using the discarded beauty of birds to chart the path of the gods. You reach the threshold of your home and pause, looking back toward the silhouette of the great temples against the darkening sky. The smoke from distant hearths rises in straight, grey ribbons, blending into the shadows. You know that when the sun rises tomorrow, the work will continue, and the symbology of the sky will be completed. The transition from the mundane to the sacred is a slow one, measured in the placement of a single feather, the tightening of a single thread, and the quiet devotion of a craftsman who knows that he is dressing a god. You step inside, the coolness of the evening air finally giving way to the warmth of your own dwelling. And as you prepare for rest, the image of the shimmering green and gold remains behind your eyelids, a promise of the celestial light you will awaken once more with the coming of the dawn. The steady, rhythmic thrum of the Coyotl drum begins as a low vibration in the soles of your feet, travelling up through the cool stone of the great precinct where you stand among the gathered throngs. It is a sound that matches the beating of your own heart, a deep, resonant pulse that seems to pull the very breath from your lungs and replace it with the scent of burning copal resin. The smoke hangs in thick, white ribbons against the darkening sky, blurring the sharp edges of the great temple, and as you exhale, you feel the weight of the day's labour finally lifting from your shoulders. Your hands, stained with the juices of plants and the oils of birds, rest at your sides, yet your mind is still entwined with the delicate work of the studio. Then he emerges. As Moctezuma steps into the light of the ceremonial braziers, the world seems to tilt on its axis. You see your own handiwork, the months of silence, the thousands of tiny knots, the careful selection of the longest Quetzal plumes, transformed from a static object on a wooden frame into a living, breathing extension of the divine. The emperor begins to move, his steps measured and deliberate, and the headdress reacts to his every gesture with a fluidity that defies the stillness of the earth. It is no longer just a collection of feathers. It is a shimmering green sea,
a cresting wave of emerald that captures the flickering orange light of the torches and turns it into something celestial. You watch with a quiet, exhausted pride as the iridescent feathers shift their hue with every tilt of his head. One moment, they are the deep, shadowed green of a jungle canopy at midnight. The next, as he turns toward the fire, they ignite into a brilliant electric lime shot through with flashes of gold and turquoise. It is a spectacle of light that feels almost heavy to look at, a visual density that commands the eyes of every man, woman and child in the plaza. You notice the way the light catches the tiny gold discs you sewn into the base, creating a constellation of stars that dance across the emperor's brow, reflecting the glory of the sun, even as it sinks below the horizon. As the dance quickens, a new sensation reaches you through the air, a sound that you recognize intimately, yet have never heard in such a grand, haunting chorus. It is the rustle of the feathers, a soft, dry whispering, like the wind moving through a field of tall grass, but it is punctuated by the sharp, rhythmic clinking of the gold bangles. Each time the emperor shifts his weight, each time he bows his head to honor the cardinal directions, the metal strikes against metal with a clear, crystalline ring. It is a delicate music, a shimmering acoustic layer that floats above the heavy thud of the drums and the shrill cry of the clay flutes. To your ears, it is the sound of the sacred, the voice of the birds, and the voice of the earth's precious metals, speaking in a language that only the gods truly understand. You look around at the faces of the people standing near you, and you see the profound, paralyzing impact of the regalia. There is no cheering, no boisterous shouting. There is only a heavy, reverent silence that settles over the crowd like a thick blanket. You see a young man nearby, his jaw slack, his eyes wide and unblinking as he stares at the towering crest of green. For the populace, this is not merely a man in a costume. The feathers have erased the human boundaries of the ruler, extending his height, amplifying his presence, and draping him in the literal skin of the divine. He has become the Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a being of both the sky and the soil, and the psychological weight of this transformation is visible in the way the people bow their heads, unable to look directly at the blinding brilliance of the crown for too long. You feel a strange sense of detachment, a quiet realization that you are one of the few who knows the secrets behind the splendor. You know the exact tension of the maguey fibers that hold those plumes in place. You know the small, hidden imperfections in the underside of the leather band that no one else will ever see. You know that this godlike figure is supported by the invisible labor of your fingers, and that knowledge brings a peculiar comfort as you stand in the shadows.
The Emperor's movements are a language of power, a physical manifestation of the cosmic order, and as he spins, the long tail feathers trail behind him in a blur of emerald silk, carving symbols into the air that linger in the mind long after the movement has ceased. The air grows cooler as the night deepens, the stone beneath your feet leaching the last of the day's warmth, but you do not move. You are mesmerized by the way the gold leaf on the headdress seems to glow with its own internal heat, a molten yellow that anchors the ethereal lightness of the feathers to the solid reality of the world. The contrast is breathtaking, the heavy, unyielding gold and the weightless, shivering plumes. It is the balance of all things, the eternal and the fleeting, the sun and the forest, the king and the craftsman. You find yourself swaying slightly to the rhythm of the dance, your body remembering the repetitive motions of the loom and the needle, finding a shared tempo with the sacred performance unfolding before you. As the ceremony reaches its crescendo, the drums reach a fever pitch, a wall of sound that vibrates through your chest and makes the very air feel thick. The Emperor raises his arms, and the headdress flares out like the wings of a great bird taking flight. In that moment, the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual seem to dissolve entirely. The flickering torchlight, the scent of the copal, the shimmering green arc of the feathers, and the rhythmic clinking of the gold all merge into a single, overwhelming experience of the sublime. You feel small, yet infinitely connected to the greatness of your city and the vastness of the heavens. Eventually the music begins to slow, the drums receding into a gentle tap, and the emperor turns to retreat back into the shadows of the palace. The brilliant green light fades as he moves away from the braziers, the iridescent glow softening into a muted, velvety olive. The crowd begins to disperse, their voices hushed as they carry the image of the feathered god back to their own hearths. You too begin the walk back through the winding streets of the city, the sound of the gold bangles still echoing in your ears like a distant memory of rain. Your back aches with a familiar, dull throb, and your eyes are heavy with the need for sleep, but your spirit feels light, buoyed by the knowledge that you have contributed to the beauty that holds the world together. The walk home is a slow one, the moonlight reflecting off the calm waters of the canals that lace through Tenochtitlan. You pass the quiet stalls of the market, now empty and hushed, and the smell of wood smoke from 1,000 cooking fires greets you at every turn. It is a domestic, earthly smell that grounds you after the celestial heights of the great precinct. As you reach your own doorway, you pause for a moment to look up at the stars, noting how they pale in comparison to the gold you spent the day polishing. You step inside, the familiar shadows of your home wrapping around you like a well-worn cloak, and as you lie down on your mat, the rhythmic pulse of the drum continues to hum in the back of your mind, a steady, comforting reminder of the life you lead and the sacred art you serve. The morning air in Tenochtitlan carries a strange metallic tang, a scent that does not belong to the lilies of the canals or the roasting maize of the markets. You stand in the doorway of your workshop, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, feeling the cool, damp stone beneath your bare soles. The city is quiet, yet there is a vibration in the air, a collective holding of breath that makes the fine hairs on your arms stand still. Rumours have travelled up from the coast for months, whispered tales of floating mountains and men with skin like pale ash who ride deer the size of houses. But today, the rumours have taken shape. They are here, moving across the great causeway that connects your island home to the world beyond, and the sound of their approach is a clatter of iron that strikes a discordant note against the soft, rhythmic splashing of the paddles in the water. You turn back to your workbench, where a half-finished mosaic of cotinga feathers lies waiting, but your hands, usually so steady, feel heavy and uncertain. You pick up a bone spatula, its surface worn smooth by years of pressing delicate barbs into wax, but the usual comfort of the tool is absent. Outside, the procession begins to enter the heart of the city. You cannot see them from your courtyard, yet you feel the shift in the atmosphere, a sudden cooling of the sun's warmth as if a cloud has passed overhead. The emperor, Moctezuma II, the great speaker who maintains the balance of the universe, has gone out to meet them. It is a moment of profound cosmic alignment, a collision of two worlds that were never meant to touch, and you, a humble shaper of feathers, are tethered to this moment by the very work of your hands. For weeks, the orders from the palace have been relentless, demanding the finest works the Amanteca can produce. You have spent your nights under the flicker of Coyotl torches, selecting the most vibrant plumes of the Quetzal, those long shimmering streamers that capture the essence of the forest and the sky. You have woven them into fans, into shields, and most importantly, into the towering headdresses that signify the divine right to rule. These are not merely decorations, they are vessels of power, physical manifestations of the gods' favour. And now you learn through the hushed talk of the porters that these sacred objects are being carried out as gifts, offered to the strangers with the iron skin as a gesture of diplomacy, and perhaps a hope of appeasement. You imagine the scene at the great precinct, the smell of incense thick in the air as Moctezuma presents the finest treasures of the empire. You think of the headdress you helped finish only a season ago, a magnificent spray of over 400 Quetzal feathers, each one a vibrant, iridescent green that shifts to deep blue in the light, held together by a golden beak and forehead band studded with precious stones. To you, the gold is merely the frame, the necessary weight to hold the celestial feathers in place. It is the feathers that hold the soul. They are the breath of the wind, the light of the sun, the very life force of the earth. But the reports that filter back to the workshop throughout the day are confusing, even distressing. The strangers, it is said, do not look at the feathers with the reverence they deserve. When the golden discs and the feathered shields are laid before them, their eyes do not linger on the artistry of the weave or the rarity of the plumage. Instead, they reach for the gold. They touch the yellow metal with a hunger that seems almost like a sickness, their fingers tracing the outlines of the sun discs with a frantic, trembling energy. You hear that they have begun to strip the gold from the frames, casting the delicate featherwork aside as if it were mere chaff, the colourful remnants of a harvest they do not understand. To see a Quetzal feather discarded is, to you, a form of sacrilege, like treading upon a prayer. As the sun climbs higher, the heat in your workshop becomes oppressive, and you find yourself sitting on your low stool, staring at a single plume of a roseate spoonbill. Its pink is so soft, so tender, that it reminds you of the first light of dawn over the volcanoes. You wonder if the strangers have any word for this colour, or if they only see the world in the dull grey of their armour and the harsh yellow of their gold. There is a fundamental misunderstanding unfolding in the heart of your city. Moctezuma offers them the sky, the feathers of the birds that fly closest to the heavens, and they respond by reaching for the earth, for the cold, heavy metals that lie buried in the dark. The journey of the great headdress, the one that will one day bear the name of the emperor himself in the halls of distant lands, begins here, in this atmosphere of tension and misplaced values. You realize with a sinking heart that the objects you have spent your life creating are no longer staying within the sacred cycle of the temple and the palace. They are being packed away into wooden crates, smelled of salt and stale air, destined for the bellies of those floating mountains on the coast. They are leaving the valley of Inahual, crossing the great salt water to a place where the sun sets in a different way, to a world that has no name for the gods who gave the birds their colours. The ache in your back from hours of leaning over your work feels sharper today, a physical manifestation of the burden the city carries. You stand up and walk to the small basin of water in the corner, splashing your face to clear the vision of those iron-clad men. The water is cool, a brief respite from the humid air. You look at your reflection, a man whose hands are stained with the dyes of his trade, whose eyes have grown dim from searching for the smallest imperfections in a sea of colour. You are a part of a lineage that stretches back to the beginning of time, a keeper of the beauty that sustains the world, yet you feel a strange, hollow sensation in your chest, as if the very air is being thinned out. Evening begins to settle over Tenochtitlan, but it is not the peaceful twilight you are used to. The usual sounds of the evening meal, the laughter of children playing by the canals, the calling of neighbours. It is all muted, replaced by an expectant silence. You return to your mat, the same one you lay upon just hours ago, but the shadows of your home no longer feel like a protective cloak. They feel like a shroud. You lie there, listening to the distant, rhythmic clank of metal on stone, a sound that persists long after the drums have stopped. You think of the headdress, packed in darkness, moving further and further away from the hands that birthed it. It will travel across an ocean you cannot imagine,
to be stared at by eyes that see only curiosity where there should be awe. In those distant lands, the gold will be melted down, turned into coins to pay for wars and bread. But the feathers will endure in their own fragile way. They will lose their luster over the centuries, the vibrant greens fading to a dusty olive, the turquoise losing its shimmer, yet they will remain a testament to a world that understood the value of a bird's flight. As you finally close your eyes, drifting toward a restless sleep, you find yourself imagining the Quetzal one last time. You see it soaring high above the canopy of the cloud forest, its long tail feathers trailing behind like a green flame. It does not care for gold. It does not care for the arrival of strangers or the shifting of empires. It simply exists in the light, a fragment of the sun made flesh and feather. You hold onto that image, letting it anchor you as the world you know begins to tilt on its axis. The stone beneath you is hard, the air is still, and somewhere in the darkness, the treasures of your people are beginning their long, silent journey into the unknown.
The floor beneath you has changed. It is no longer the warm, porous, volcanic stone of the valley, but a cold, polished marble that holds the chill of a mountain winter. You feel the weight of a heavy wool cloak around your shoulders, a coarse weave that smells of cedar and old dust, replacing the light cotton tilma you once wore in the heat of the sun. As you walk through these long, vaulted corridors, the sound of your footsteps echoes against high ceilings, a sharp, rhythmic clicking that feels foreign to your ears. You are no longer in the vibrant heart of a marketplace. You are in the quiet, hushed halls of Ambrose Castle, far across the sea in a land of mist and pine. The air here is thin and dry, lacking the humidity of the lake. It is the year 1596, and you find yourself standing before a heavy oak cabinet, its surface dark with oil and age. This is the collection of Archduke Ferdinand II, a man who gathers the world behind glass and wood. As you look at the ink-stained parchment of his inventory, you see the words written in a cramped, elegant hand, describing a Moorish hat of long green feathers adorned with gold and bells. They do not know the name of the Quetzal. They do not know the name of the god who wore these colors. To them, it is a curiosity, a fragment of a dream brought back from a world they can barely imagine. You reach out, your fingers tracing the edge of the display, though you do not touch the feathers themselves. They are too fragile now. They have traveled across the salt spray of the Atlantic, survived the tossing of wooden ships and the dampness of port warehouses, and yet they still glow. Even in the dim light of a European afternoon, the iridescent green of the feathers seems to hold a flicker of the Mexican sun. It is a strange, quiet survival. The empire that birthed this crown has been transformed, its temples dismantled and its songs rewritten, yet the work of your hands remains. It sits in this cabinet of curiosities, nestled between pieces of coral, Roman coins, and intricate clocks, a silent witness to a vanished glory. The ache in your back reminds you of the hours you spent hunched over the frame, but the memory of the technique is beginning to feel like a fading dream. As you watch the scholars and the nobles pass by, you realize that the knowledge is slipping away. They look at the headdress and see beauty, but they do not see the mathematics of the knots. They do not understand how the maguey fiber was twisted to provide both strength and flexibility, or how the tiny gold scales were stitched so they would shimmer with every tilt of a priest's head. The language of the feathers is being lost. To them it is an object. To you it was a living prayer. Years turn into decades, and the decades into centuries, and you move with the headdress as it is packed into crates and moved from one palace to another. The wool of your cloak changes to the fine silk of the Enlightenment, and then to the heavy coats of the 19th century. but the chill of the museum remains the same. You find yourself now in Vienna, a city of grand music and stone monuments, where the air smells of roasted coffee and damp pavement. The headdress has found a new home in the Weltmuseum Wien, the World Museum. It sits behind thick, protective glass, illuminated by soft lights that mimic the dawn but lack its warmth. You stand in the silence of the gallery, watching the dust motes dance in the light. People from all over the earth come to stand where you stand. They whisper in languages you do not recognize, their faces illuminated by the green reflection of the Quetzal feathers. They call it Moctezuma's headdress, though the history is tangled and the truth is buried under layers of legend and time. It does not matter what they call it, you think, as you feel the phantom weight of a needle between your thumb and forefinger. What matters is that the green has not faded. The feathers of the sacred bird, which you once sorted by shade and length in the quiet of your workshop, still possess the power to make a stranger catch their breath. The preservation of these feathers is a miracle of its own.
In the humid heat of the valley, they might have succumbed to the rot of the earth or the hunger of insects, but here, in the cool, dry air of the north, they have endured. They have become a bridge across the water, a piece of the soul of a people kept in a reliquary of glass. You lean your forehead against the cool surface of the display case, closing your eyes. For a moment, the sounds of the modern city outside, the hum of engines and the chime of trams, fade away. In their place you hear the distant rhythmic thumping of a drum and the soft rustle of 1,000 feathers moving in unison. You realize that while the knowledge of the craft may have vanished from the hands of the living, the object itself preserves the intent. Every feather was placed with a specific vibration of the heart. Every gold spangle was a tribute to the light. As the headdress rests in its exile, far from the mountains and the lakes, it remains a testament to the fact that beauty, once created with such devotion, can never truly be destroyed. It simply waits. It waits in the stillness of the museum, a fragment of a sun-drenched past surviving in the heart of a winter city, a green flame that refuses to go out.
You lean forward, your eyes adjusting to the sterile, cool light of a room far removed from the humid warmth of the Valley of Mexico. The air here is filtered, scrubbed of dust and history, kept at a precise temperature that feels thin and artificial against your skin. You are no longer standing on the packed earth of the featherworker's quarter, but instead you find yourself in the quiet sanctum of the modern conservator. Your hands, once stained with the dyes of the cochineal and the sap of the orchid, are now gloved in soft, white latex. The weight of the world has shifted from the creation of the sacred to the desperate preservation of what remains. Before you lies the great headdress, the Quetzal Coyotl, resting upon a custom-moulded support like a fallen deity in a glass tomb. As you look closely, you notice the toll that 5 centuries of travel and shifting climates have taken on the delicate structures you once knew so intimately. The brilliant green of the Quetzal feathers is still there, a ghost of the forest's heart, but it is muted by a microscopic layer of time. You pick up a tool that would have seemed like magic to your ancestors, a specialized laser, its beam no wider than a single hair. With a steady breath, you begin the process of cleaning. You do not scrub or wipe. Such violence would turn the ancient barbs to dust. Instead, the light dances across the surface, gently lifting away the soot of European hearths and the grime of old museum cabinets. It is a slow, meditative rhythm, much like the one you used when first tying the knots. You watch as the light reveals the true iridescence beneath, a flicker of that old divine fire returning to the world, 1 millimeter at a time. Your back aches with the same familiar stiffness you felt as a young apprentice, though the chair you sit in is ergonomic and the floor beneath your feet is polished linoleum rather than cool stone. You reach for a tiny brush, its bristles made of the finest synthetic fibers, and gently tease apart a cluster of feathers that have become matted over the centuries. You are looking for the original intent, searching for the way the light was meant to catch the curve of the plume. Beside you, a monitor hums, displaying a high-resolution X-ray of the headdress's internal skeleton. It is a strange sensation to see through the beauty to the bones. You study the way the bamboo splints were notched and how the agave fibers were twisted. The X-ray reveals the secrets of your predecessors. The precise points where the original orchid bulb adhesive was applied, now crystallized and brittle. You can see where later hands, perhaps well-meaning but less skilled, attempted to repair the piece with wires and modern glues, creating tensions that the fragile structure was never meant to bear. The silence of the laboratory is heavy with the weight of an ongoing conversation, a debate that echoes through the halls of power and across the vast expanse of the Atlantic. You feel the pull of the earth beneath you, a longing for the headdress, to return to the thin, high air of the central highlands, to the place where the sun strikes the mountains at just the right angle to make the gold spangles sing. There are those who speak of repatriation, of returning this crown to the descendants of those who wore it. They argue that its soul is tied to the valley, that it is a displaced ancestor waiting to come home. You hear their voices in the quiet moments, a soft murmur of justice and heritage. But then, you look at the readout on the environmental sensors. You see the data that warns of the headdress's extreme fragility. The 500-year-old feathers are no longer living things. They are husks of protein and pigment, held together by the faintest of margins. The vibration of a long flight, the subtle shift in humidity during a transition across the sea, these things could cause the Quetzal plumes to shatter into 1,000 green needles. You realize that to move it might be to destroy it, and this realization settles in your chest like a stone. You are caught in the ethical labyrinth of the modern age. Is it better for the object to remain in a distant, cold city where it is safe and preserved, or should it risk total dissolution to return to the soil that birtled it? There is no easy answer, only the slow, rhythmic ticking of the laboratory clock and the soft glow of the feathers under the lens. You spend hours documenting the way the gold has tarnished, noting the exact composition of the metal. Through the microscope, the hammered gold discs look like vast, cratered moons. You can see the tiny scratches where they once brushed against one another as a king moved his head, a physical record of a dance performed centuries ago. These marks are precious. They are the fingerprints of history. You treat each one with a reverence that borders on the religious. You are not just a technician, you are a guardian of a fading memory. The ethics of display weigh on you as well. You wonder if it is right to keep such a sacred thing behind glass, under the gaze of thousands of strangers, who may never understand the prayers that were woven into its frame. You consider the dim lighting of the gallery, necessary to prevent the colours from fading further, and how it makes the headdress look like a dream half remembered. As the evening settles over the city outside, you set down your tools and take a moment to simply be in the presence of the work. Your hands are tired, the muscles in your neck tight from the hours of concentration. You think of the birds that gave these feathers, the thousands of quetzals and cotingas that once flew through the canopy. You think of the hunters who moved through the shadows of the cloud forest, and the merchants who carried the precious bundles across mountains and rivers. All of that life, all of that effort is concentrated here, in this quiet room under your care. The headdress is a bridge stretching across the abyss of time, and you are the one tasked with keeping that bridge from crumbling. You realize that your relationship with the piece has changed. It is no longer just an artifact or a masterpiece of featherwork. It has become a living patient. You listen to its silence, watching for any sign of decay, any tremor in its structural integrity. You understand now that conservation is not about making something new again, but about honoring its journey, including the scars it has gathered along the way. The debate over its home will continue, shifting with the political tides, but your duty remains constant. You will continue to clean, to stabilize, and to watch. The wool of your modern sweater feels heavy, and the scent of wood smoke from a distant fireplace somewhere in the city drifts in through a vent, reminding you of the fires of the old world. You close your eyes for a second, and for a brief moment, the sterile laboratory disappears. You can almost feel the weight of the crown on a brow, the rustle of the wind through the long green tails, and the heat of a sun that hasn't set for 500 years. But then you open your eyes, and there is only the soft hum of the air purifier and the shimmering, fragile reality of the feathers before you. You reach out, not to touch, but to adjust a sensor, your movements as graceful and deliberate as the weaver you once were. The green flame still burns, protected by the very science that seeks to understand it, a testament to the enduring power of beauty to command our devotion, century after century. The memory of the workshop never truly leaves your hands, even as the centuries pull the world forward into a different kind of light. You find that the rhythm of the featherworker is not something that can be erased by time. It simply changes its shape, migrating from the grand palaces of Tenochtitlan into the quiet corners of mountain villages and the sun-drenched courtyards of modern Mexico. As you walk through a contemporary market, your eyes are drawn to the vibrant flicker of a hand-woven textile or the delicate arrangement of dyed feathers on a celebratory mask. You feel a familiar pull in your fingertips, a ghost of the old precision, as you witness the descendants of your craft keeping the ancient heartbeat alive. The techniques have shifted, and the materials have adapted to the world of today, but the soul of the work, the belief that a human hand can capture the essence of the divine, remains as steady as a mountain. You watch as a young artisan meticulously glues a single downy plume to a board, creating a mosaic of color that mirrors the iridescent patterns you once laid upon a shield. It is a quiet continuity, a thread of gold running through the tapestry of a nation. The headdress, once the exclusive crown of a god-king, has transformed into something even more vast. It has become a symbol of identity, a green and gold beacon that tells the story of a people who looked at the sky and saw not just air, but a canvas for the sacred. When you see the image of the great Quetzal plumes printed on a page or fluttering in a parade, you feel a deep, grounding sense of pride. It is the weight of the wool cloak on your shoulders, the coolness of the stone floor beneath your feet, and the knowledge that your labor was never truly lost. The intersection of nature and art is a place where you have lived your entire life. You understand, perhaps better than anyone, that to work with feathers is to enter into a contract with the living world. It is a slow, meditative dialogue between the forest and the city, between the wild spirit of the bird and the disciplined mind of the maker. You lean back now, feeling the slow ache in your lower back that comes from hours of focused devotion, and you realize that this weariness is a gift. It is the physical mark of a life spent in pursuit of beauty. The world outside may grow loud and hurried, filled with the hum of machines and the flicker of artificial lights, but within the sanctuary of your craft, time moves at the pace of a growing vine. As the evening settles around you, the air grows still and cool, carrying the faint, lingering scent of dried herbs and ancient dust. You think of the Quetzal, far away in the cloud forests, its long tail feathers trailing like emerald ribbons through the mist. You realize that the bird and the headdress are one and the same, a bridge between the earth and the heavens. The shimmering green is not just a color, it is a prayer, a way of saying that even in a world of shadows, there is a light that cannot be extinguished. You close your eyes, and in the darkness, you can still see the iridescent glow, a soft and rhythmic pulsing that matches the slow rise and fall of your own breath. And so, the legacy of the Amanteca endures, not in the cold stone of monuments, but in the living warmth of the hands that continue to create. You feel a sense of profound peace as you drift closer to sleep, knowing that the sacred headdresses are more than just objects of gold and feather. They are vessels of memory, holding the whispers of the wind and the heat of the sun within their fragile frames. The science of the future may measure the age of the silk and the chemical composition of the dyes, but it can never fully capture the spirit of the moment when you first laid a plume upon the frame and felt the world align. The room is very quiet now. The shadows stretch long and thin across the floor, and the weight of your blankets feels like the protective embrace of a ceremonial robe. You are no longer the weaver, no longer the guardian, but simply a part of the shimmering whole. The boundaries between the past and the present begin to blur, like the edges of a feather dipping into a pool of water. You imagine the great headdress of Moctezuma, resting in its glass case, miles and years away, yet you can feel its presence as clearly as if it were in the room with you. It does not demand your attention, it simply exists, a quiet testament to the enduring power of human devotion. As you sink deeper into the softness of your bed, your thoughts drift to the quiet, shimmering beauty of the Quetzal tale. You see it in your mind's eye, a single, long plume, catching a stray beam of moonlight. It does not move, yet it seems to vibrate with a life of its own. The green is so deep it is almost blue, then so bright it is almost gold. It is a color that belongs to the dawn, to the first light that touches the canopy of the world. You watch it, mesmerized by its stillness, by the way it seems to hold the entire history of the forest within its delicate barbs. The shimmer begins to fade, very slowly, as the light retreats. It is a gentle transition, a softening of the edges until there is only the memory of the glow. You feel your limbs grow heavy and warm, the last remnants of the day's tension dissolving into the cool air. The forest is quiet. The workshop is dark. The feathers are still. You breathe in the scent of the night, a clean and ancient smell that speaks of deep roots and high branches. Everything is as it should be. The sacred work is finished, and the beauty you have helped to bring into the world remains, a quiet flame that will continue to burn long after the sun has disappeared. The green flame flickers one last time in the theatre of your mind, a tiny spark of emerald in the vast velvet dark. It is a comforting sight, a reminder that even the most fragile things can possess a strength that defies the passage of centuries. You let go of the day, letting your thoughts drift away like loose down caught in a gentle breeze. They float upward, tumbling softly through the air until they are lost to the sky. There is only the silence, the steady rhythm of your heart, and the eternal, quiet shimmer of the feathers watching over you as you finally, peacefully, fall into a deep and dreamless sleep.